Learning French is hard indeed, but it's not impossible. If you become aware of the challenges that you will face, this whole learning process will be at least 50% easier for you. Challenge number 1 is pronunciation differences. French pronunciation is very different from what you're used to in English. For instance, you need to hear and pronounce very unique sounds, and you have to master other specific difficulties as well. In French, we have silent letters. Many letters are not pronounced and are often silent. For instance, the S in Paris, Paris, Paris. The liaison, which is linking the final consonants to initial vowels. For example, in les amis, we don't say les amis, we say les amis. We also have several types of accents that are used in French and can change the meaning and pronunciation of words. It's the difference between une marche for a walk or a hike and un marché for a market. Une marche, un marché. We also have the elision, by which a vowel is dropped at the end of a word when the next word begins with a vowel, replacing it with an apostrophe. For example, we don't say je aime, we say j'aime, j'aime, j'aime. French tends to have more even stress across syllables, whereas English speakers often stress certain syllables more heavily. Stress in French is usually placed on the final syllable of a word. And honestly, in English, this stress that you put on words drives me crazy. It's way too difficult to remember for me. So French is easier in this area. And we have much, much, much more. This is a lot. No wonder you're overwhelmed. So let's look at how to pronounce the difficult French sounds. In terms of difficult sounds, we have some vowel sounds which are nasal sounds. It's the en in sang, you can feel it here, sang, sang, sang. The un in pain, 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 and the on in non, non, non. For nasal vowels, the mouth is open and the tongue is low. The airflow is directed through the nose. Try sans, you can feel it here. Sans, sans, dans, maintenant, maintenant, etc. Like other specific French sounds, here the problem isn't only that they're hard to pronounce, it's that they can also be hard to hear. You might need to practice if you want to hear the difference between, for instance, the U and the OU. U, OU, U, OU. The U is one of what we call the pure vowels. We have the U in dune, in prune, in lune. Here the lips are rounded and pushed forward. U. The tongue is high and close to the front of the mouth. For example, salut, dune, etc. In French, we also have consonant clusters, and they can be challenging for English speakers. It's the ñ in montagne, montagne, the y in fille. French has fewer consonant clusters at the beginning and the end compared to English, but they can be really tricky for you as well. And at last, the French R is pronounced at the back of the throat. The tongue is positioned low and back, and the mouth is slightly open. Think of it as a gargling exercise. Let's try with rouge, rouge, rue, rue, rare, rare. In order to practice to master these sounds, you can use a mirror to observe and correct your mouth movements and lip positions with vowels. For example, lune, salut. Maybe not while brushing your teeth though. In order to work on sounds, you can practice minimal pairs of words that may differ only by one sound. For example, peur and poire, peur and poire, peur and poire. For the E and the on sound, you can try pendu and pondu, pendu, pondu. For the OU and the U, l'amour, la mûre, l'amour, la mûre. For the E and the OU, la peur, la poule, la peur, la poule. When you're practicing nasal vowels, you can practice those by holding your nose while pronouncing the words with nasal sound, so that you can feel it here. You're not going to say this in real life, but it helps in front of your mirror. Bon, bon, bon. Pain, pain, pain. un, un, dans, dans. This helps because you can feel the air here. What really matters as last is to dedicate time every day to practice French sounds, even if it's just 5 minutes when you're on the walk outside, or simply listening to French music and try to sing along. Or you can do something like reading out loud every morning at breakfast the title of the 2 French articles online about current affairs, or culture, or sports, anything that you really like. And at last, for all of them, once you're done practicing the sounds, put them in a sentence. For example, le loup salue la poule, le loup salue la poule, or les deux fous sont seuls et saouls. Obviously, these are more textbook French examples, but you can make them fit your own life. Something that students also love are tongue twisters from theater. For example, un gros gras grand grain d'orge. That's a classic one and it's tricky. Un gros gras grand grain d'orge. Ready for this one? Before we move on to grammar, one last thing, which is a tip from my brother. It sounds a bit weird and dumb, but honestly, it works. Pretend to be a French person. Exaggerate your French accent when you're working on sounds. It sounds weird when you're practicing this at home, but students who do it often discover that French people understand them a lot better after. So try this and you will see. Challenge number 2 is French grammar complexity. Still here, félicitations. Let's keep diving by taking an overview of the French grammar rules that differ significantly from English. First, all French nouns are gendered, either masculine or feminine. We say le livre and la maison. But they can have different meanings with different genders. Le livre is the book, la livre is the pound, le tour is the turn, la tour is the tower. Articles, whether definite or indefinite, change according to the gender and the number of the noun. We have le, la, and les. We have un, une, and des. In terms of conjugation, we have 3 main groups of regular verbs with different sets of endings. Roughly, those that end in e, those that end in IR, and the others. For example, marcher and danser are part of the first group. We say je marche, je danse. Finir and nourrir are part of the second one. We say je finis, je nourris. And voir and faire are irregular. We say je vois and je fais. These are only a small part of all the grammar pitfalls that you might struggle with. I could mention many more issues, like the difference between lever and se lever, or between je veux le vin and je veux du vin, or why you need to say elle marche souvent and not elle souvent marche. You could fill a whole book with these difficulties, and actually these books do exist and they can be very useful when learning French. And that's where the hard work starts. If you're looking for textbooks to sit down with pen and paper, I recommend the Progressive du Français series from Clé Internationale. We also have Practice Makes Perfect, Complete French Grammar by Annie Hemingway, and Le Becherel, La Grammaire pour tous, which are great reference books. Otherwise, there are lots of practical exercises to improve your grammar understanding. Write and build sentences using specific grammar rules and goals. For example, if you're practicing le passé composé, write about your day, making sure every sentence has at least one verb in le passé composé. That's a very classic exercise. Another very classic exercise are the clause exercises. It's the ones where a word is missing in a sentence. They're a good way to practice specific grammatical points, especially for conjugation. At last, if you're listening to a French podcast from France Culture or a song by Clara Luciani, try to write what you hear. You can check against the transcript of the lyrics at the end. Challenge number 3 is vocabulary and false friends. False friends, words that look similar in both languages but have different meanings, are a classic difficulty for students. Some words look the same in French and in English and mean roughly the same thing, like un train and a train. But sometimes these similar words are deceptive. They are what we call false friends, with totally different meanings. For example, une librairie and a library. They are a bookshop and une bibliothèque. Actuellement and actually, for currently and en fait. sensible and sensible, which are sensitive and raisonnable. On the one hand, I'm sorry, but there is no real shortcut here. You kind of have to learn them by heart, like the rest of the French vocabulary, whether in a list or as they come up in your conversations. On the other hand, well, you can learn them with the rest of your French vocabulary that you will need anyway, and there are techniques for that. Keeping a list of words that you are learning or discovering is a good idea. This can be a vocabulary journal. You can create flashcards as well using an app like Anki or paper index cards. Actively listening to your favorite French media is a good idea as well. You can watch YouTube channels from France.tv, news broadcasts from TV5 Monde, Lupin or the French Agency on Netflix, etc. You can use subtitles in French or in English to understand the context and then try watching again without subtitles. Write down new words, expressions, or phrases in your journal or flashcards. An idea that comes from a student that I absolutely love is to label your environment. You can use sticky notes on objects around your home in French. This will create a constant visual reminder to help you associate the French words with this object. I love this idea. Challenge number 4 is sentence structure and idioms. There are some differences in structure between French and English. Generally, French follows the same subject, verb, object order, but can also use subject, object, verb in certain cases, especially with pronominal verbs and some subordinate clauses. For example, je le connais for I know him, or je lui parle for I talk to him. Many more examples in French. The negation is also something very interesting because spoken French and written French are going to be different. Je ne fais pas is what you learn from your textbook, je ne fais pas, but in everyday spoken French we might say je fais pas. So the sentence structure changes depending on whether you're writing French formally or speaking it. I told you spoken French and written French for 2 different languages. And at last, questions. Same thing. In your textbook you might have learned ne parle-t-il pas, but in everyday spoken French we don't do the inversion, we remove the ne and it becomes simply il parle pas, il parle pas. And even if you're not advanced enough to understand all these grammatical subtleties, understanding French culture is very important on your language learning path. Because speaking French is an art form. Understand appropriate forms of address, whether tu or vous. It's not going to be a big deal in your everyday life because people understand you're a foreigner, but that makes for funny situations. In French, we don't have a universal you to talk in the same way to our elderly neighbor, our new dentist, our nephew, or our colleague. It's tricky and it can change as you get to know each other. Understand personal space and physical contact. We have different personal boundaries in social interactions as well. In French, silence can have a function of respect that doesn't exist in the American culture, where chit-chat will be the form of respect in the same situation. If you want to know more about this, check out Cultural Misunderstandings by Raymond Carole. It blew my mind. French people love conversation and love to disagree, so get ready to defend your ideas no matter your level of French. The worst sin in French is to be boring, so please surprise us. And now let's look at some practical tips for overcoming challenges. And yes, they're very classic, but they work. Dedicate a specific time each day for language practice, even if it's just 5, 15, 10 minutes with your morning coffee. This is what students from my 30-day French challenge do, a 15-minute French activity every day. The most important is to use your French. Talk to your dog, your cat, talk to yourself in French, so the words don't get stuck in your brain until you forget them. I always start my live lessons with students with the same question. What do you want to achieve with your French? Not what level do you want to reach, not what exam you want to pass, or what tense you're struggling with. This will help you concentrate on the vocabulary and the sentences you need for this personal goal. If you're not passing an exam, concentrate on learning spoken French, which is almost a different language from written French from your textbook. Always confront what you learn in your textbook with what you hear on French TV programs or real conversation. Don't get stuck in your textbook examples. They're a fantastic foundation, but it is not an end goal to speak like a textbook. You're here to speak French in real life, not just in theory. Today we had a short overview of some of the difficulties of learning French. The weird French sounds and pronunciation rules, the complex grammar, the traps of vocabulary, and all the cultural nuances of French conversation, big or small. This might sound like a lot because it is a lot, but there is a secret. The secret is even French people struggle with all these rules. In real everyday French, we don't even follow all of them. And this means don't worry. We know that it is hard to learn all the grammar and pronunciation and everything, and we will give you a lot of leeway when speaking French yourself. Start by learning what you need for your own conversations at your own pace, or you can concentrate on one difficulty at a time. For example, tell me, what do you want to focus on this week? Write it in the comment area in French if you dare. Share your own challenges with the community. Are you going to practice listening to the difference between U and OO, or make a deep dive in the grammar of French pronouns, or simply learn all the vocabulary you can about French food? Or you can try to watch one lesson per day from my vault of free resources. On my website, you will find all my previous lessons in video and in writing, so you can follow along, take notes, and practice with me. There is also where you can subscribe to my exclusive newsletter to start your habit of learning French regularly, with a new lesson every week and extra tips just for you. In any way, there is a link below this video where you can find all this and more. I will see you there. Allez, à très vite.